Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sallam. Wa la hawla wa la quwwata billah. So my publisher Surahs has asked me to make another little video about this book I wrote called The Tentative Guide to the Themes of the Surahs of the Qur'an. Well, have you ever wondered why certain verses come in certain surahs, and why certain surahs seem to be in a group with other surahs, for example, like Al-Imran and Al-Baqarah and Al-Mudaththir and Al-Muzammil and the two Mu'awwidhatayn and Hameems and so on. And have you ever wondered what the word surah means? The word surah comes from the Arabic word for wall, which means that each surah, as it were, is an entity in its own. And in fact, there's one of the challenges in the Qur'an is to come up with the like of a surah. So I was discussing this with Mawlana Mufti Taqi Uthmani, and I suggested to him that over the years, as I'd been reading the Qur'an, it seemed to me that there was an idea behind every surah, and that these ideas themselves were complementary. So he said, why don't you write something about it? I thought he would write it, but then he asked me to write something about it, and I took that as kind of a barakah. So I did. And in this book, I suggested that I went through, in detail, I went through the first 12 surahs of the Qur'an and showed how every single verse goes back to a single idea that underlines the surah. Now, a single theme. Now, the theme can have different subjects, but all those subjects relate back to a single theme, like a string on which pearls are strung. It's sort of a single unifying theme. And so I suggested this, and I show this how this works in great detail in the first 12 surahs, which is up to the end of Surah Yusuf, which is about 40% of the Qur'an. And I put the themes for the other surahs and just left it out there for Muslims to discuss and to contemplate. The commentators have spoken about other things. For example, Suyuti in his Asrar Tartib as-Surah shows how each surah talks about something in general, or things that were mentioned only in passing in the previous surah. So it takes a principle in the previous surah and threshes out in details and how this works over the 114 surahs. But what I've suggested is that the 114 surahs themselves each have a theme, and those themes are spiritual ideas that make up the totality of human beings, that are kind of portrait of human beings. And if you think about that, that should be the case, or might well be the case, because the Qur'an is one of God's 3 books. God has 3 books, 3 great books: nature, human beings, and the Qur'an, and also, the Torah. But for us, it's the 3 books, and they are images of each other because they all reflect the divine names, and they all consist of divine words. In Arabic we say Kitabullah al-Ma'mur, Kitabullah al-Mastur, Kitabullah al-Manzur, which is the world. So these 3 works, these 3 books of God must reflect each other, and therefore the Qur'an itself must depict human beings. And the Qur'an says this in a number of ways. And in other verses. Anyway, if you're interested in this, and I find it very interesting, and it's a sufficient response to those people who say that the Qur'an doesn't have a definite order, then you might find this book very interesting. Alhamdulillah.